Welcome back. Now that our game loop is completely finished and we know how to build the game and so forth, what we'll do now is add some audio. So I'll briefly go over how you can set up um, audio hooks and how you can create some audio cues. So as you can see, I have already created a folder in my content folder. So I just right clicked and created a new folder and gave it the name audio. And if you then go back to the content that was provided, if you remember, we already imported the twin stick shooter content. We also had a folder called audio. So if I go to that audio folder, I have my U assets. These are the final results. We're not going to use those. They're just here as a backup. But we'll use these source audio files. And you'll see 4 of them. Just select them all and drag and drop them into the audio folder. And you'll see that Unreal imports them nicely. If you want, you can also preview them by clicking on it. Right, so you'll hear the audio play and so forth. All right, so using these sounds, we're going to hook up a couple of things. So let's head over to the blueprints folder, and the first thing that we'll do is we'll add a sound whenever we fire our weapon. So let's open up our base weapon, like so. And let's navigate to the spawn primary fire projectile. Alright, here we are. And right before we spawn our actor, so I'm going to just move this off to the side somewhat. Right before we do that, we're actually going to play a sound. So I'm going to drag my execution pin from my spawn primary projectile and add a node called spawn sound. And I'm going to do spawn sound attached, right? I want the sound to be attached to my weapon. And I'll actually drag my weapon mesh as the attach component, like so. And then next up, I'm just gonna select my sound. And the sound that I'm gonna use is going to be the blaster shot single. Let's take that one. Let's hit compile, save, and let's test it out. That seems to be working. It's a bit loud, but that's okay. That can be controlled in your settings, of course. Then let's do another sound. Let's go to our base projectile. And let's add a sound whenever we deal damage. So we want to make sure that whenever we deal damage, we kind of have a nice sound effect going on. So let's go to the top here and let's add one to our BPI damageable. Right, so I'm located at the top of our chain here, right after we do the damage to the BPI damageable. And again, I'm going to play sound attached or spawn sound attached. Like so. I'm going to attach it to the collision. And the sound that we'll play will be the laser gun impact. Redman 12 on 112 laser gun impact. Okay, and then I'm actually going to copy paste this as well and go to where we do our health component damage dealing. And also hook it up at the back here. Like so. Let's hit compile, let's hit save. Always test, so notice how we are actually we have the impact sound as well. So that's also great. And then finally, and I know it's a bit campy, but it's just for as an example, right? We're gonna add a dead sound to our enemy. So let's head over to our BP enemy character. And let's head all the way to the end. Right before the delay, right? So the delay is gonna clean it up. But after we set our collisions, so that's actually, the moment that we die. And when we start playing the animation then, so before our delay, I'm also gonna play a sound attached. So spawn sound attached. And we're gonna select the mesh to attach it to. And as the sound, we will take the famous Wilhelm scream. So search for Wilhelm scream. There we go. Now this is optional. I know that that's rather annoying sound, but you know. So yeah, it's a bit dramatic, but you get the idea. All right, good. So now we have hooked up our sounds, and by the way, if you double click on your sound, you have a bunch of options here. So for example, you can change the default audio, set looping, that kind of stuff. So for example, with all my different sounds, I'm gonna reduce my audio volume level actually. I'm gonna put it to half. Uh, so let's double click on that one as well. Let's set it to half. Hit save. Then double click on that one. Set it to half. Let's hit save. Of course, you have a whole bunch of options here. It's a fully featured system. So let's try it. It's still loud, but less annoying to the ears, I guess. You could even reduce it more if you want to, but I'll leave it for now. All right. So finally, what I want to do is I want to create a sound cue. And the sound cue will be used for the enemy so that they have some sound so you know where they're coming from. So the sound cue will also allow us to do some additional things with the sound. It's going to be not just, play sound, it's going to be a little bit more advanced. So in our audio folder, I'm going to right click. And actually, instead of right clicking, I'm going to select my sound that I want to create a cue from. So let's go to our guttural monster noises and right click on that one and then create a cue from that. So at the top, create cue. Let's call it zombie groans. And you can go ahead and open it up by double clicking on it. Okay. So as you can see, it's kind of like our animation setup, right? We can do all kinds of stuff here in this graph and then get our final output result. I can play the cue. Right, it's a nice guttural zombie sound. And what we'll do is we'll have this looping. So let's stop this first. So select your wave player and change the looping parameter to be enabled, right? So now the sound, whenever we play this cue, it'll be a looping sound. Good. Then select our output here. And I actually want to make some changes here. I want to change our attenuation somewhat. So you have a bunch of attenuation options here. I'm gonna ignore all of these, like air absorption and reverb, all of that stuff. I'm not gonna bother too much about that. What I will do is I will override my attenuation. So click on under the attenuation tab, click on override attenuation. And attenuation is basically the fall off of your sound, right? So how far will your sound kind of propagate through the air? And then go and find attenuation distance at the top. And we're gonna make some changes here. So I'm gonna change my inner radius to 150. So as soon as I am within that inner radius, I'll have full volume. So that's 1.5 meters. And then my maximum distance is going to be 1,500. So 15 meters. If I'm further away than 15 meters, I won't hear anything. So that, and in between, I'll have a nice fall off for my audio. Good. Now, we will have a lot of enemies, and if we have all the enemies play the sound at the same time, it's gonna get really noisy and really annoying. So we want to add some variation. So to do that, we can add a delay node. So let's right click here and add a delay. And just connect our output like so and select the delay node. And let's set it to a minimum delay of 0, which is fine. And then add a maximum delay of 10. So there's a possibility that it'll take 10 seconds before they do their first groan, but because we have a lot of enemies, that's fine. It's going to be, an offset between the playback. Also, because we're looping every time it wants to play a sound, it's going to have a random delay. So, it'll give some variation and prevent them constantly doing the groan back to back to back to back to back. Good. Now, if you were to listen now, well, let's play the cue. Let's select this one, play cue. Right? See, we're not hearing anything. And after a random amount of time, it's going to play the sound. Right? So if I set this back to 0, it's going to constantly play the sound as soon as it's finished. Alright. But every time it's going to play, it's going to be exactly the same sound though. So let's add some additional variation as well. So this is a rather long cue, which is fine, but let's add some additional variation. I want to have some pitch shifts. So some will have a deeper groan, some will have a higher pitch groan. And we can also do that here. So again, we're going to right click and add a modulator. Let's connect that up. Okay. And in our modulator, I'm going to say, well, I want to have a minimum pitch of 0.5 and a maximum pitch of 1.5. And I want to have some that are more quiet. So minimum volume of 0.85 and the maximum volume, I'm going to leave that at 1.05. Right. So if I test this now and kind of bypass our delay here, I can go to our modulator, play the notes. The play the note is going to play it at this point, right? And then notice the variation in speed and intonation and pitch. That's exactly what I want, right? We want that randomness. So I'm going to stop playing the cue, hit save, and close this off. Then head over to my blueprints folder and open up the enemy character. And let's head over to the viewport, add a component, and let's add a audio component. So let's have just audio, groans. All right. And let's have a look here under the sounds. We're going to link our sound cue. So search for zombie groans, like so. And now we can also see our attenuation ranges, right? We can see how the sound will be propagating. So we have our inner range and our outer range. Then hit compile, hit save. Let's give it a go. Right, so they have different pitches, different intensities. All right, there we go. And now we have audio.